you kind of come from the dark and gritty, which is kind of laughable now, 1989, Tim Burton Batman. Do you think this was sort of an antidote to that? Sort of like a bright and cheery?
No, actually, Carmen Infantino, it's exactly kind of the opposite of what you said.
Okay, good.
Up to that moment, comic stories had kind of been spoofed on television, right? And the Tim Burton Batman ushered in a new way of telling the story, saying, we're going to let the rest of the world in on a secret that all of y'all have known for decades. That these are themes of classical drama. These are unblessed sons who get extraordinary abilities. These are, in my case, the death of a brother who I assume the powers to avenge his death. This is a father who is wrongfully convicted of killing his wife in front of his 10-year-old son, and only his son believes he's innocent. You all knew all this. The rest of the world thought it was zam, pow, whoosh. Right? So Tim Burton the heels and
I'm on a roll. Hi, Steve. Hi.
I'm technically challenged. My friend over here was going, I was like, what? Have I got something on my shirt? Anyway, so that sort of reset the template. And we came in behind it with our Flash, and we really took the character darker than the Flash historically had been. You know, because we wanted to have the tension, we wanted to have the darkness. We shot at night. We had fire trucks out on all of our sets, wetting everything down to give it that dark, menacing look. Carmen Infantino actually, I heard, said, Flash isn't supposed to be that dark. They're always shooting at night, everything's all wet. But we had to redefine the way of telling these stories, which I think we successfully did, and now the new show can come in behind it. They shoot in the suit in the daytime. Grant Gustin wears that suit like a second skin, you know. I never wanted to say dialogue in the suit. I wanted it to be monosyllabic. If I'd had my way, they would have only shown a piece of the suit at a time, almost never reveal the whole thing. So I wanted it to be threatening. As an actor coming from New York, I had already been on Broadway once. I had 2 Emmys for my work in daytime TV, one opposite Julianne Moore, the other opposite Kevin Bacon. You're all 1 degree of Kevin Bacon now. He was my dressing room mate on Guiding Light. So anyway, and I was nervous when they first came to me and they said, you know, a superhero show for television, and I was a little bit nervous about it because, you know, I didn't think that's where my talent lay, I think where my interest lay. And then April Webster, multiple Emmy award-winning casting director for Lost and a whole bunch of other shows. She talked to me on the phone. She said, John, just read the script. Read Paul DeMeo and Danny Bilson's treatment. That's all I ask. And I read it. And I found out that it was what I said earlier. It was okay. In our version, here's this son, second son, who decides to work in the crime lab because his mother doesn't always want to be worried that all of her men may not be coming home that night, right? So he's CSI before CSI was cool, right? And so I go into the crime lab. My brother Jay is a street cop. My dad, played by the truly iconic Emmett Walsh. You know, real cops work the streets. You know, my beeper goes off, I go to work, and my mom, played by Priscilla Pointer, says, be careful, Barry. And my dad says, what's he gonna do? Stub his toe in a footprint? Ha 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 ha. You know, so Barry's fine with that. And then suddenly, this accident happens to him, and he gets these extraordinary abilities. And suddenly, he can do things that would make his dad so proud of him, times 1,000, and he can't tell it. So I'm thinking, okay, all right. And I also loved what Barry's first reaction was. He went to Tina McGee, he said, I'm not gonna be a lab rat. What you're gonna do is you're gonna take this freak stuff away from me. I have no interest in being Hugh Hollywood hero. That has not been my life script from the beginning. I don't intend to start now. And then his brother gets killed. And I love Tim Thomerson. And I love, despite the fact that Tim was the blessed son, and I was the unblessed son, you know, archetypally, that we still had that close relationship, you know? And when he gets killed, then it's on. Then it's like, okay, now I've changed my mind. I want a hood so nobody can know who I am. I like that red blotch that the motorcycle gang is terrorizing the city with. I want an insignia of my own. And I draw the flash arrow, and it's on. And I'm thinking, I'm reading this, and I'm thinking, yeah, yeah, I could play this. And then I auditioned. I think they saw about 60 guys for the part.
I was going to ask, what was the audition process like? At what point did you get fitted for the suit? You know, obviously it was probably a pretty popular role. I'm sure you did more than one audition.
Oh my God. Now anyway, network tests will take years off your life. First of all, you have to go to the studio. It was Warner Brothers. And you got to get their stamp of approval. And the creatives, and Danny Wilson and Paul DeMeo, that took 2 or 3 meetings, auditions. And they saw 59 other guys. And then they decided on 2 of us that they took to the network for the network test. Now, here you are, this actor, you know, just out to LA, and you walk into this conference room, and there are 25 executives from CBS and Warner Brothers, and it's, I'm telling you, it's like Armageddon. You know, you think, how am I going to get through this? Anyway, they read me, and they read the other guy, and they offered me the role, but not right away. They asked to see other film, other tape. About 3 days later, they made an offer. My manager, Hank McCann, who cast all of Herb Ross's films, he's mentioned in the movie The Player. At one point they say, get McCann. He's this iconic casting director who managed a couple of people, Ken Olin, me. Anyway, so he called me, he said, yeah, so they made an offer. I said, oh great, I got the part, what'd you say? I said, I thank them very much and hung up the phone.
Was he playing hard to get?
You what? He said, no, it's okay, I think about it. Hey, you know, by this point the buzz was so enormous. The most expensive show Warner Brothers had ever done for television up to that point. And it was a coveted role. And so many big names wanted to already guest star. You know, we had Angela Bassett. We had the guy who's starring in Network on Broadway right now, who played Lyndon Johnson. Somebody help me out.
Bryan Cranston?
Bryan Cranston. We had Bryan Cranston.
No name actor, never heard of him, never seen him.
Michael Champion. You know, I mean, we had all these people lined up. A little actor named Mark Hamill. And so, you know, by this point I was invested, so I'm like sweating it. So he calls me back about 4 or 5 hours later. I think he's on a train going from Washington, D.C. to some. He said, yeah, they called back and they upped the offer by this much. I said, oh great, it's on. He said, well, what'd you say you accepted? He said, I thanked them very much and hung up the phone. He did this like 3 times. I swear, I'm not going to make it to 80 because of him. You know. And finally he said, okay, I think we've gone about as far as we can go. And he accepted the offer. And then the process of being fitted for the suit, the body cast, the individual muscle pieces. They spent $100,000 in 1990 to build 4 suits. And that's a whole nother story, which I won't get into unless somebody asks a question, because I'm doing run-on answers.
So, yeah, actually that was one of the questions. What was the process of getting in the suit versus getting out of the suit? What was the longer process? He probably could just sort of pour you out of it, I assume, at the end of filming.
Well, it was hard to get out of because by then it was soaking wet and stuck to my skin. You go like this, and I was the sponge, you know.
Well, it looked, at least externally, like it was made of velvet or velveteen or something. I could only imagine it was probably just rubber or something, like a wetsuit on the inside.
But the way they built it, they brought me in, Bob Short, Academy Award winner for Beetlejuice, building the suit. They bring me in. I don't know what the process is going to be. They say, okay, strip to your underwear. They grease me down. They wrap me in cellophane. I'm not asking any questions at this point. And then they put a spandex suit on me. It was black, a spandex form-fitting suit. And then they began to, well, that's after they did the body cast. They made the individual foam latex body pieces. Then they began to glue a pec on, a shoulder, you know, a quad. They would start gluing the muscles on individually. And then I found out why they greased me down and wrapped me in cellophane, because the glue, when it set, got hot. And then they let that all glue on. They took that off. Then they took it and put an electromagnetic charge through the suit and flocked it with a red material that gave it that velvet look. And then I put it on, and we're doing these tests. You should see the first test of how we get the special effect, because we pioneered some of the techniques that they're now using on the new show. But at first they thought, well, we don't want the balloon to be hopping up and down. So why don't you try doing a Groucho scoop? So at 3 in the morning, for about 3 hours, I'm going across the back lot. You know, and that didn't work. And then they finally said, I said, just let me run. I'll just run. And so that's what we ended up doing. But I had this tip, because the suit was so big, that I didn't realize I was doing it. And Danny Bilson came up to me and he started laughing. I said, what are you laughing at? He says, well, you're kind of doing what is it? What character in the cartoon, before they take off, would go like this and then boom. So
exit stage right even.
Yes, so I go, and then boom. They said, no, that looks funny. You need to just go, man. Just need to go. So, you know, we worked out the kinks, but literally they would take my gloves off, and they would be full up to the wrist in sweat, and they just dumped the water out. They came up with a vest like race car drivers wear that had tubing in it, and you could circulate ice water through it. I couldn't sit down in the suit because it would crease. So they brought out this old lean board that used to be used at Warner Brothers for the costume epics. And I would get up and I'd lean on the board. They'd pull the hose out of the back of the suit, hook it up to an ice chest, circulate ice water through the vest, and jolt me awake, you know. So yeah, in those days we had to glue the mask here and under the chin. And so once I was in, I was pretty much in. And they couldn't clean them.
Well, that's why they needed the 4 suits, right?
Well, no, there were 2 for the stuntmen, 2 for me. So at 5 in the morning, I'd take it off, it'd be wringing wet, they'd hang it in my trailer, they'd spray it with Lysol. When I went to put it back on, it was still wet and sticky, so I broke out all over my back. At this point, I stopped, and I say, nobody wants to hear someone who has been privileged to play one of these characters stand up here and whine, oh, the suit was so difficult.
Did anybody take that as whining?
No. You know, I am grateful that they didn't stick me in a pair of red tights. Because as Bob Short said, if you just put somebody in a pair of red tights, you could be Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's going to flatten you out, and it's going to remove your definition. So they built a really high definition, high tech suit. Having said that, there were challenges, and we all have our superhero suit stories, don't we, Captain? Absolutely.
So you mentioned a name that I'd be remiss in talking amongst, you know, my fellow nerds. You mentioned Mark Hamill. Do you have just a quick 30-second, 2-minute story about Mark that you'd be happy to share with us?
There are no quick 30-second stories after 60.
We got time, right?
I'll just warn you right now, there are no short answers. Mark Hamill. Well, the thing about Mark, as I said, I was very self-conscious. I didn't want any B-roll in the suit. I didn't want any pictures of me by craft service eating, you know, cheese doodles in the suit. I didn't want to turn into a mascot. There is a picture of me up on the lean board with the cowl back, with a Diet Coke in this hand. Close your ears. This can never happen.
Earmuffs.
And a cigarette in the other.
It was the 90s.
Man, don't ever let that picture get out. But I was very self-conscious. As I said, I didn't want to say dialogue in the suit. And you can see I'm stiff in the suit at the beginning. Well, here comes Mark. Working that unitard. Right? He is, you know what, to the wall. He is not, he's taken no prisoners. And I thought, wow, well, if Mark Hamill can be that comfortable and that committed. You know, by the time we got to the last episode, it was the trial of the trickster, and I had on the trickster boots with the suit, and he had me mind controlled, and you were fighting the police and being goofy. I finally relaxed. So I got it right just before we went off the air.
So, where do you think the Flash would have gone if it had gone further into the series?
I think they were planning rogues
Yeah.
for the season.
So we would have seen like a Zoom. Would we have seen a Grodd?
I think so. I
Interesting.
think so. Although I have to tell you, the reason it took us 9 days, 2 units shooting simultaneously, I was there 55 to 80 hours a week. You can imagine the hours the crew put in. Well, our transpo department, it was not unusual for them to put in a 25-hour day, okay? And our guest stars would come in, except for Mark. He would have stayed there around the clock as long as it took.
He'd still be there, right?
He'd
now,
still be there,
by himself.
right now working it. But by about the 3rd day, you know, we started an episode at 3 a.m. on a Saturday morning. They woke the director up out of his hotel. We finished the previous episode, and they called him to the set. And he's like, "Man, you guys are crazy." He said, "What are you talking about? We have a good 7 hours we could shoot," because they would tent in the back lot to shoot day for night. But the problem was we didn't have CGI, and so it took us a long time. As Mark has commented, if we wanted that scene where we had the semi and we blew up the cars and shot flames 40 feet in the air, we had to really do it. We were out on the back lot or at different areas that had the right buildings and architecture till 5, 6 in the morning, almost every day. You know, we'd work till 9 or 10 a.m. Saturday morning. We'd be back in at 7 a.m. Monday morning. So even though we were budgeted as the most expensive show Warner Brothers had ever done, we were always over our budget. Now, they can do a lot of that. It looks fantastic, CGI in post-production, which gives them time, you know, to tell the characters, to tell the relationships, to tell the stories, which is one thing I think they're getting really right. You know, I loved going in as Henry. I was so glad they didn't ask me to come back as Jay, because Henry was a different character. My dad was not wrongfully convicted of killing my mom in front of a 10-year-old me. That wasn't our origin story.
That would have been a little grim.
And well, that's the new show, the story.
No, believe me. In 1990, that would have been grim. Now it's like, oh, yeah, we all know Batman's story, and this isn't as bad as that.
Right. So when I found out that that's how Jeff Johns had blown up the Allen family, I thought, if they come to me, that's the role I want. Because we would still get the passing of the torch, but it would be not as on the nose. It would be in the form of a father-son blessing. And when I found out Barry was the only one who believed I was innocent, I said, okay, all of our scenes are going to be in Iron Heights, in a cubicle on the phone. That's going to force us inward. In a big show with lots of spectacle and action-adventure, I figured the lights would go down, the music would soften, we'd step into those booths, we'd pick up the phone, we'd look at each other, make a connection, and tell the truth.
Which is exactly what happened, and that's what sold me on the show. I was like, nah, it's not going to be as good as what I remember as my memory. But that scene where you and Grant are just like, just you and the glass and the phones, I was like, all right, cool, done, I'm in, sold.
Yeah, it was so meaningful. I'll tell you, those, because we couldn't do our business. You know, there was no tap dancing in the booth. You know, you had to sit there. There was nowhere to hide, and you had to make a connection, and you had to tell the truth. I'll tell you, those are some of the most rewarding and meaningful scenes that I have done in my 39-year career.
All right, so now that we're on the new Flash, there was a couple of episodes where you had a little mini reunion, right? So you had some castmates from the original show. Were you hesitant to sort of do that, or did you take it in the spirit of it's reverential?
Do you mean on the show, or do you mean when we did a red carpet event?
I mean on the
LA?
show.
On the show.
On the show.
No, I was thrilled. Listen, the thing, I never knew when I was working for Greg Berlanti on Dawson's Creek,
Right.
20 years ago, that his favorite character was the Flash. I never knew it. I never knew he was a fan of the 1990 show until the 2014 show came along. And here's the deal, and I think this is what people respond to. Our producers are not making a product for mass consumption. They are writing and creating, Todd Helbing, Greg Berlanti, Jeff Johns, David Nutter, Aaron, while he was still there. They're writing a show that they want to see.
And it just so happens that the world's agreeing.
And if we like it, that's fine with them. You know? But I think that communicates. And they were fans of the original show. I was watching a scene. I wasn't in it. Grant, he was in the crime lab, and he's trying to do the centrifuge, and it's not working. And he stops. He gets frustrated. He hits it. He looks this way. He looks that way. He picks up the tube, and I'm going, wait a minute. And he does it like this, and then puts it back in. Action for action. That is exactly what I did 24 years earlier. And I'm saying, who directed this episode? And it was David Nutter. David Nutter, he is such a good director to get your emotion up. Right before we did the arrest of Barry's father coming out of the house, you know, he wanted that emotion high. You know, Barry, he's gonna look after Barry, the mother, I'm being taken away by the police. Barry! He comes up to me and he says, you were my hero growing up. Okay, action.
We only got time for one take, go! So I'm going to digress for half a second here, and then we'll start taking questions. But Alex Desire, I keep forgetting it was an actor, because Hepcat, a band that he's in, is anyone familiar with Hepcat? It's a kind of soul-infused, ska-infused. Have you had a chance to see Hepcat perform?
I have not seen him perform.
Well, you're in for a treat if you ever get the opportunity. So Alex Desire, as you all know, was on The Flash, is in a band called Hepcat. So just a free plug for that. So we've got, I don't know.
Let me tell you something about Alex.
Please, about 15 minutes.
Alex would always, he was so grounded, man, because for me, as a young actor, finding myself at the center of the most expensive show Warner Brothers had ever done, with my own parking space at the lot and all of this swirling on, and 2 units shooting simultaneously and me being shoveled, I found myself overwhelmed at times. Not Alex. You know, he would ad-lib, he would throw things off. They went. I mean, if you're an actor, you really open yourself up for it, right? But it's part of the job. They got my high school yearbook, and with lots of hair. And so we were going through it, we were seeing different in a scene in the crime lab. And Alex looks at my picture and he goes, man, that is one bad helmet, dude. I'm like, you did not just do that to me. Of course they kept it in.
So we've got